Hello, everybody. What's up? Welcome back to another episode of Dropping Bars. I am your host, Kimron Korean, and I have with me today a very special guest, someone who comes highly recommended to Dropping Bars. I have Dr. Donna Swapp. Dr. Swapp, welcome to Dropping Bars.
Thank you, Kimron. Thank you, Kimron. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to share.
And I'm happy to have you. So, Dr. Swapp, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself? Who is Dr. Donna Swapp, and what do you do?
Okay, so by way of formal introduction, my name is Donna Hazel Swapp. If you know me as Hazel, it's because you knew me from childhood up until secondary school. I started using Donna from time CC thereabouts. So in these spaces here in Canada, people generally call me Donna. And by way of who I am informally, I am a mother, I am a sister, I am daughter, I am a niece, I'm aunt, I'm friend. And most of all, I'm proud Grenadian. So in these spaces here in Canada, I am a Black scholar, I am a university professor, I am a researcher, and I am a social justice warrior. So I am anti-racism, anti-homophobia, anti-Islamophobia, anti-hate, which necessarily means that I am pro-choice. I am pro-LGBTQ2+. I am pro-consenting adults choosing to live their lives as they see fit. So that's how I would describe myself in terms of my advocacy and in terms of my work and research. And yes, generally, if there's anything specific you want to know, then feel free to ask me. So that's generally in a nutshell who Donna is.
Thank you for saying that. And one of the things you mentioned, you said that you were a researcher, and I know that recently you received a very prestigious research grant for the work that you're doing. Can you talk to me about that?
Yes, and thank you for asking, and thank you for noticing that. So my team and I work with 3 other very esteemed researchers, and I am the principal investigator on that grant. It's from the Spencer Foundation in the United States. So we won a $75,000 US grant to explore the work of Black school principals in Canada, 3 jurisdictions in Canada: BC, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. And principals work in Grenada and Jamaica. So principals work in Canada, Grenada, and Jamaica. And so we're looking specifically at the ways in which our colonial heritage continues to inform principals' practices and continues to inform who principals are as Black people in these spaces across these 3 sites. So thank you for noticing. I'm very proud and happy. I'm leading the research here out of the University of Regina in Saskatchewan, Canada, and my colleagues are Dr. Faye Wang, who is at University of British Columbia, and Dr. Katina Pollock, who is at Western, which is where I did my grad work, Western University. And then we're also joined by Dr. Annette Walker, who herself is an education consultant, a doctorate holder as well, and she does research in terms of work and well-being of Black principals. So thank you for asking. Yeah, very excited about it.
That's so amazing. And, I'm pretty sure that you've had a very interesting journey. I mean, the journey from Grenada to Canada, you're pursuing your PhD. Now you're gonna do your research. You got the research grant, and talk to me about the journey. Like, I'm always interested in people's journey, like how they got from where they are, where they were to where they are now. And I'm pretty sure there's a story there. Talk to me about that journey.
Yeah, well, what a journey. What a ride. But I wouldn't change anything, any experience for anything. I embrace all of the experiences I've had. So the journey has been fulfilling, rewarding, all of those pieces. So I originally came to Canada in 2010 to do my master's. And I was fortunate to get a scholarship, an OAS scholarship to do my master's. And then I got a scholarship to do my PhD. So I persevered in my undergrad because I knew if I did well in my undergrad, there would be opportunities to get scholarship to do your master's and PhD. And so on account of how I did in my undergrad, I graduated with first class honors from the University of West Indies. I did my bachelor in education administration. And I was fortunate to be one of 2 Caribbean nationals to get the OAS scholarship that year. The second person was my aunt, Alana Felix.
Oh,
So Alana studied
nice.
at UBC and I came to Western, right? And so that throughout my childhood, that I am one of 6 kids from a working class home. My dad was killed he was killed by American soldiers in the 1983 invasion. And so my mom, for a while, raised us as a single parent until she met my stepdad and had other children. And so it was a tough upbringing. So all of that, I think, channeled my energy into academics. I was reading from the time, as far as I remember, from I was 4, always engrossed in books and learning. And so it's a natural progression for me to be here. I'm actually conducting
Right.
the interview with you here in my office at the University of Regina. So it has been a challenging journey. I always knew I wanted to be in education. I tried to persevere. I had a difficult primary and secondary school experience, just in terms of lack, but not in terms of love and attention, but just in terms of the physical needs. And so I let that guide my decisions and so on. And yeah, so I came, I did my master's, and then I stayed and finished up my PhD. And now I am fortunate to live and work here in Canada. So in a nutshell, that is what has brought me to that journey.
And what a ride, like you said. That's, congratulations on everything that
Thank you.
you've done, that you're doing, and that I know that you will continue to do. Now, I am very intrigued by some of our pre-conversation, and even in your introduction when you spoke about your anti-hate, your pro LGBTQ, your for generally you think differently. Like you don't just subscribe to the societal norms, not just because it's something that's generally accepted that you will just go by it. And so I'm quite intrigued by that. And I want to kind of, touch on that a little bit. Like you said, I'm anti-racism, I'm pro-life. I'm for, it's like you embrace love in everything that you do. And
Yes,
so that's so amazing, and if you can share with me, like, are there any like socially accepted norms that you totally disagree with?
And I think, yes, great question. And I would not say it's necessarily that I disagree. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So my very best friend, his name is Michael. He lives in the US. He's gay. I met him when I was 13. The first time I saw him, he was walking the streets of Grenville, and someone was calling out to him with the B, that B word we use to describe homosexual people. And there were just people looking at him, staring at him, and I can see the humiliation on his face. And it was the first time I actually heard the term. I sort of knew what it meant, but it was the first time I saw someone actually bully someone in the open like that. And I remember I was disturbed since then. And one of the advantages of living here in Canada is that I have grown to engage with and understand the language that I need to use to describe this kind of hate. You know what I mean?
Right.
So in the Caribbean, I wasn't able to articulate what really stood out to me as being so wrong about what happened. And so that social justice agenda has always been with me. And I don't have one set of lens when I look at social justice to say that I emphasize racial injustice and that's it. I believe that every form of oppression should be done away with. We all deserve, we have only one life, and we all deserve to live in a way that pleases us. And my mantra is this: as long as you're not harming children and animals, you should be free to live your life as you see fit. And so people jokingly or half seriously say to me, Hazel, you should come back and be in politics in Grenada. And I'm like, you guys, you're not ready for me yet. Because the first thing I would do is make sure that gay and bisexual and queer people generally have the same rights that we have. And so those are not conversations that I feel that Grenadians are ready to hear. And so I tell my friends here, for example, and some back home, I would prefer to face racism here in Canada than to have my daughter experience homophobia in Grenada. My daughter is 8. She's discovering who she is. We have conversations on an everyday basis around trans people who identify as transgender, different types of families. You can have families with 2 men, 2 women. It's as a normal repertoire. And that's where I feel we need to go. And that's where we need to get. And so that's one of the reasons why even here, facing discrimination as a Black person, I prefer that. Because the kind of homophobia that we experience in Grenada and the Caribbean, where violence is often attached, I don't want to be part of that. And those are conversations I think that we should be having. So that is what inspired me. My very first experience of that kind of oppression and hate was with now my best friend. At the time I was 13, and he was probably in his early 20s then. And I saw that happening with him, and I learned, I did research and I engaged, and I saw the way Canada, for example, as a society that purports to be more inclusive. I see how things can possibly be, Cameron, and I know how things are not in Grenada. And so that is what has inspired me on this journey of social justice. And
that's so important. And I'm glad that you're openly speaking about it. I know that you said that, or like at least from the Caribbean standpoint, our society is not ready to have that open conversation like that as yet. But hey, it has to start somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
So, right. So I'm glad that you're so open about it. And you said that, and that is so interesting to me when you said, I prefer to experience, is it like racism here than have my daughter experience homophobia or transphobia, whatever it is, in Grenada or the Caribbean. That's such a strong statement. And I feel like I want to kind of delve into it. I mean, we don't have to really go all the way down there, but it's really,
that's one of my passions.
But it really stood out to me. It really stood out to me because that says to me that you feel very strongly about this. And so I guess the question I want to ask you is, what do we need to do then as a Caribbean society to sort of become more accepting, or at least more tolerant, and exhibit more tolerant behaviors? Okay. What do you think we need to do?
And I would preface this by saying that I am not an expert in the area, right? My area of expertise is educational leadership. So anything to do with the work of school principals, the work of other school leaders, teaching practices in the classroom, inclusive practices, how to address EDI and so on in the classroom. And so issues around gender diversity and so on, that's not my area of expertise. And so I will first say that we need to draw on the experts in these areas and people who have that those lived experiences. And that's another reason why, for me, I identify as straight, as heterosexual. I'm a cis woman, just as I appear. That's who I am. And so, for me, I will never be able to speak from that experience from someone who so identifies on the gender spectrum like that. So the first thing I think we need to do is, I think here in Canada, we sometimes talk about tolerance, but I think we need to move away from tolerance. We're in 2022 now. And I sometimes hear people, and I see posts on Facebook, for example, with people saying, we're all entitled to our opinion. No, that is not true. That is an erroneous statement that people sometimes make, that they feel that they are always entitled to an opinion. You're not entitled to an opinion that is offensive to someone else. You're entitled to it insofar as you should keep that opinion to yourself. Because voicing that opinion hurts other people, prevents other people from living lives, their fullest lives, the same way you are able to do. We should make that space for everyone. So the first thing I think is a simple bit of reading to Cameron. I think a lot of Grenadians can just get off Facebook for a while, or stay on that platform, but go do some research in terms of gender diversity, in terms of countering heteronorms and so on, and bias and prejudice and discrimination and hate generally. And how, so these are ways we can try to be a more tolerant society. I also believe it starts with our leadership. So, for example, in this last election, I noticed that the political leaders of both main parties were shying away from directly engaging these issues. Even in terms of COVID, for example, they weren't, because, so many Grenadians have their own issues around COVID and so on. They were shying away from these conversations. But I think these are conversations we need to have. And while it can start on a grassroots level, I think we also need to engage our leaders. Our leaders need to be explicit, and they need to speak about this hate, and they need to put laws and policies in place that will get rid of avenues where people feel that they can get away with, perpetuating those kinds of hate towards people. So I think it starts there. It starts with love, because I always say, for example, so I've had a conversation with people on Facebook, for example, where let's say there's a young lady my age, she has children, and she's, according to her, she's so totally against homosexuality, for example. And I said, but you have 2 boys. I said, so what if one of your sons? She said, well, he better kill himself, or I would prefer to be dead before that happens.
Wow.
And to me, that is, listen, my child, I am ready to move mountains. And she's only 8, Kimron, and I would say that I've been this passionate even before she was born. But now that I have her, I am ready to move mountains to ensure that she faces no discrimination. When my child comes home to me, when I pick her up, for example, I'll give you an example. We're coming home in the car and I say, hi, baby, how was your day? She says, my day was good. And then she tells me, oh, there's somebody who I like. I said, okay. I said, is there a boy you like? Is there a girl you like? Normal conversation. And if my child tells me she's a girl, she identifies as a girl based on that social construct of what a girl is, biologically, as a girl. And if she tells me she likes a girl, oh, I'm happy the same way. I'll be a little bit worried because I know how society would receive her for her preference. You understand what I mean? But I'm totally fine. And when I speak to my nieces and my nephews, it's the same way. And so that's what I feel. I feel like as a community, we need to have those kinds of conversations, make them a part of our everyday dialogue, without the censorship and without the disgust that some of us seem to portray, because the same biblical precepts that we draw on, Kimron, to denounce some forms of homosexuality, we're silent about other ones. And we always try to draw on Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, that's not true. God did not destroy that place for homosexuality. He destroyed it for sin. And there's malice, there's lust, there's fornication, there's adultery, there's homosexuality. All of those pieces are in there. So if we're having a conversation, let's not be hypocritical about it. And so that's what I feel. I feel it must become a conversation that we must have on a normal basis to make that difference. Does that make sense?
You're right. You're right. And
Yeah.
you see the last piece, the last thing you said, and it's something that I mean, when persons say, well, we hate this person because the Bible says this and the Bible says that, and I'm like, well, from my Christian teachings, the Bible is a book of love. So I find it hard that we're justifying hate with the book that's supposed to be the book of love. So I definitely feel you on that. I definitely feel you on that. And it's good that we have people within our society that's so passionate about these topics and who's willing to openly have the discussion on it, And so, yeah, I mean, it's you mentioned that somebody said to you, maybe you should get involved in politics. And I'm thinking, wow, maybe you should. That passion that you have, that drive. Okay. So, wonderful. Now, I'm pretty sure that throughout your journey, throughout your career, that there are some lessons that you learned along the way that helped you in some aspect of your life and helped with the level of success that you've experienced. What would you say are 3 lessons that you learned that you can share with us?
I'll share some with you. And I'll share not necessarily all 3 are things that I had at the beginning. So I want to touch on, so the 3 of them would be physical and mental health, consistency, and making sacrifices. So let's do physical and mental health first. If we're not alive to be here to make a difference, then that is moot. We have to be alive, we have to be well to make our contributions to society. And when I break down my philosophy generally in life, I can make it more nuanced in terms of academics and research and service and all of those pieces. But at the very base of it, it is this. I am here to leave the world a better place than I found it. And so that comes with a lot of implications and a lot of responsibility. And so we have to be mentally and physically well. And sometimes I feel that we take that for granted. And by the physical well, even for myself, I realized that I took a little longer to do my PhD because I was not physically and mentally well. And so taking time to address your physical and mental health, that would be very, very important. To me, that's foundational. And that is particularly problematic and important in the Caribbean context because we tend to have that stigma around mental health. And for years, I suffered under depression and anxiety and not really being able to identify what it was. Until, I was having a conversation with a Jamaican girlfriend and she said, Donna, you need to see the doctor. That sounds like anxiety when I describe my heart racing and, stuff like that. And then I went to the doctor and I've been doing therapy. I can tell you proudly, Cameron, I've been doing therapy for maybe going on 7 years. I look forward to having those kinds of opportunities to talk about that. And as I said, physical health. So in terms of the choices we make, what foods we eat and so on. Diet, exercise, all of those pieces. So that's the first one. We need to be physically and mentally healthy to do anything in life. The second one is consistency. So success doesn't happen overnight. Unless you're 1 in a billion, 1 in a million, you're so lucky that you won the lotto or something, or you come from, you've had generational wealth. And that's something I tend to emphasize to, as Caribbean people, we're not focused on generational wealth. We're just concerned with living today. But again, I can talk about this piece in a bit. So in addition to being physically and mentally well, you have to be consistent. So you have to get up and show up every day. And if there are impediments in your way, if there are barriers in your way, you need to be explicit about what those are and you need to find help to address them so that they can get out of the way so that you can press on with the task ahead of you. And that task is whatever you have set that task to be, whatever you have determined that task is going to be. For me, I have always been passionate about education. From since I was very young, 2 things I always said. I wanted to be a teacher and I wanted to do a PhD. Those 2 pieces came to pass because, I was focused on where I wanted to go. There were little stumbles along the way, but I kept that as the end goal. And so whatever I needed to get out of the way in order to make that happen, I was prepared to do that. The third one is this notion of making sacrifices. I feel that for a lot of us, especially coming from poor, small communities in the Caribbean, we don't look at the big picture. We are so preoccupied with living for today that we're not preparing for tomorrow. And so I believe that we must enjoy today, but prepare tomorrow. And I don't mean when tomorrow comes, we prepare for it. I mean, anticipate the tomorrow that we want and put plans in place to ensure that they happen. Now, let's talk about some practical things, what it may mean. So let's talk about prioritizing, for example. I know that sometimes we need to do things that make us feel good. In this world, we still have COVID going through. We have so many financial, emotional, all kinds of battles that we're dealing with on the daily. Trauma, generational trauma, sexual trauma, all kinds of trauma, all kinds of issues we're dealing with. And sometimes we need to do something for us that would make us feel good. And that is not to say we shouldn't do that. I am all for it. But let's say, for example, you have a pattern of, I come home all the time and I see our women, we're beautiful, we look well, and I applaud us. But the little issue I have, if I can be honest with you, is when you pick up the phone to call me to ask me for some financial help, and your nails are 10 inches long and well manicured. The eyelashes cost you $40 and then another $40 to put that in. And the hair is another $800 US. And you're asking me And if you check the weather outside now, Cameron, it's minus 27, feels like minus 30 something. And
Oof.
I don't have the nails and I don't have the eyelashes because I am looking at the big picture. I'm looking at education savings for my daughter. I'm looking at those kinds of generational wealth. I'm looking at buying property. You know what I mean? And so for me, our priorities, we need a shift. And that financial literacy is a piece that I feel we can benefit highly from in the Caribbean. And if we have people who are experts in the area, who can probably have workshops with Grenadians or just on an everyday have conversations, because sometimes I try to have these conversations with people that I know and some of them may take offense by it. And it's not to suggest, and I want to be clear to your viewers, that I'm not suggesting that we don't look good. I'm suggesting, actually I'm not suggesting, I'm saying that we need to prioritize. So I'll give you another example that warms my heart, Kimron. The ads. Sometimes I'm on Facebook and I see so many GoFundMe ads out there for people healthcare. All well and good. But for $45 a month, $50 a month, you can purchase healthcare. And so at least you have something to fall back on if something happens. So you're not literally starting from scratch, is what I mean. So there are little ways we can help ourselves that I think we do not capitalize on. And so for me, keeping those things consistent, it doesn't mean once in a while I wouldn't want to do the nails, I wouldn't want to have a spa day, because as I say to you, I pay for my therapy. I have a massage or two every month. My physical health is important. I pay for gym membership. When the weather is good, I go walk on the road. So these are the pieces that have kept me focused, the physical and mental health, being consistent and learning to make sacrifices. So those are the three that I would share.
And I want you to kind of talk to me about one of the things that you mentioned, which was generational wealth. Like share your perspective on that with me, because that's something that we don't really talk about in our society. Like we do not talk about generational wealth. And I mean, out here in Canada, and so that's something that, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm having discussion with people, and they're talking about it, they're talking about life insurance, and they're talking about all these things. And we don't do that. And I mean, you start asking yourself, like, okay, what do we need to do to really start having those kind of questions surrounding things like generational wealth and discussing finances at the dinner table? You try to bring up finances at the dinner table back home, and it's like, that big people thing, stay out of that, whatever. So talk to me about your perspective on generational wealth.
Yes, and I'm glad you said that, because as I said, it just needs to become part of our normal repertoire. Like in our classrooms, we can bring our teachers or our educators into this, having classrooms. And I'm sure I see from evidence on Facebook, I see that there are, when I say Facebook, I mean the news media on Facebook. I see that there are financial literacy courses starting to happen, and that's excellent. I can tell you that if I had them when I was 20, the debt that I have now, that I'm finishing off, I would not have had them. So I think that is important, and I'm not suggesting, when I speak of generational wealth, to suggest that I have it all together and I have so much generational wealth. No, I had to start at a place where I was struggling first to learn my mistakes. And so for me, I'll give you again, I like to be practical in terms of how we think. So I remember the first time I traveled to the US in my early 20s, I took a loan. I don't remember the amount. Maybe it was around 8,000 EC. I'm traveling, so I'm going to take a loan. And I came back. And then I realized a year later, I consolidated that loan into land purchase. And my God, I took years to pay back for a vacation that I spent 3 weeks in New York, and that was it. And so I said, that doesn't make any sense. And so going forward, I said, I am not taking a loan for anything that cannot either pay back for itself or generate some kind of income. So to travel, for example, if I know as a school teacher, your August vacation is coming up your August vacation is coming up from September. I used to do traditional sense. We have susu hands. So let's say, for example, I have 2 susu hands. I know I tell the person I want my hands in July because I know I'm going to use that. And then every month when I get my salary, I buy $100 so that by the time I'm ready to go, I have about $1,200 and I already have my susu hand. So I don't need a loan. And I'm not suggesting that it's that relative ease that I had that everybody else would have, because we all have different financial situations happening. But it's the mindset we have where, as I said, we're thinking for today. And so we need a loan for today and we'll worry about paying for it tomorrow. Well, then when you're worrying about paying for it tomorrow, you can't pay for an extra swim lesson for your children. You can't, my God, save for a little vacation to take your children on a plane outside of Grenada so they can see the world. These are things that I think do not enter the normal mind of our people. And that is why there continues to be that widening gap between the haves and the have-nots, if you understand what I mean. And so,
Right.
And I guess it depends too on how many children you have. I'm fortunate, I'm blessed to have one child, and so I can afford to give her the level of education that I did not have, that I feel that she would need to compete on the level with white privileged kids. And so those are the pieces that I find when we talk about generational wealth. I think that would be important to touch on. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. There are some financial literacy seminars happening now. I know Ariza has been doing financial literacy seminars for quite a while, actually. So, but yeah, that's the kind of conversation that we need to be having, and the kind of way that we need to be thinking. We shouldn't be, applying for a loan to spend 3 weeks in the US and pay back for like the next 5 years. It's crazy, But I guess once we start having more of that conversation on financial literacy, then maybe people can start having a shift in the mindset surrounding finance and personal finance. So tell me something. If you had a chance to talk to young Donna at age 10, what would you say to her today?
I will tell my little self a lot of things. And can I preface it by saying that my little self grew up in a society that still exists today where my shade of black was not well received. Now things are changing, but I am a dark-skinned black person. There's no mistaking my melanin and my excellence, my black excellence. Now that's the kind of way I've grown to be confident in myself and in who I am. But growing up, I used to have family members call me black. And when they call you black, it's a derogatory black. Move your black so and so. You say you're black, those kinds of things. They will tell you it's not a compliment. Yes. And then we know that there were certain spaces, public spaces or jobs where we prefer to have all lighter skinned people. And I'll tell you, my younger self, when I went to TAMCC, no more. There was in TAMCCs where I really felt that distinction so I went to Convent Grenville and I was in a space with a kid with other peers, excellent peers, who went to the tongue schools, the esteemed tongue schools. And even our educators or our instructors at TAMCC will be looking to those kids for contributions in the class and not mine. And, and I used to sit back, Kimron, and listen, and I remember, and I'm like, I could do better. I am just as good or even better than these kids. But, it's a currency that they had. And that currency they got because as a society, historically, we've learned to privilege certain institutions over others. I taught for 11 years at McDonald College, and I can tell you, of course, I'm biased. But McDonald College is the best Grenadian institution, I feel, academic institution that we have in Grenada. We are so well-rounded in terms of academics and sports, you name it. But we still had to fight for space. We had to fight for relevancy, And that is not to suggest, though, that the students who themselves, by the way, the students who went to those town schools, half of them are from the country, by the way. They take the bus and they go down every day. So
yes,
still, it's that kind of dualism we have between tongue and country. And I talk a little bit about that in my doctoral thesis that I did in my interview with school principals and the dynamics of their work on an everyday basis, depending on where they are, who gets funding. When you have a fundraiser, which schools are getting funded more than others. And so these experiences went before me and they sort of colored who I was. So I remember it wasn't until I was late in my teen years that I embraced my shade. There are still people in Grenada today who are trying to lighten their skin shade, who
Mm-hmm.
feel that being fairer in some way is better,
Yeah.
and those are the legacies of colonization. I feel that is still before us in our thinking, that I think we need to get rid of. So I will tell my younger self that you are worthy, that you can make it. And this is not to suggest that I never despaired of making it. I always knew I would make it, but I was wary of the journey sometimes, the struggle of being poor, not having things. And so that's what I will tell my younger self, that there is better, that things will get better, and that I am here to make things get better. And so I hope every day I'm still an inspiration to myself and to others, that better is out there and we can achieve better.
What a great way to wrap up this interview. Wow. That was amazing. That was amazing. Dr. Donna Swapp, thank you so much for joining me on Dropping Bars today. That was a very fun interview. I can feel your passion just coming through the screen. I can feel it, and I'm pumped. I'm not even there with you, and I'm pumped.
Fantastic. That's the educator in me.
I know, right? So that was great. Thank you so much. And to everyone watching, thank you again for tuning in to another week of Dropping Bars. Don't forget to subscribe, follow wherever you are consuming this interview from or on. And I will see you next week for another episode where I'll have another great guest with me. Again, thank you